I'm here to claim that Jurgen Klopp in Liverpool last season had the worst case of deja vu in the history of deja vu, or at least in the history of deja vu in sports. The smart football fans out there might remember that Jurgen Klopp once coached for a while at Borussia Dortmund in Germany. And while he was at Dortmund, his team were pretty good up until his last season. His last season was his 7th at Dortmund, and this past season at Liverpool also happened to be his 7th season at Liverpool. This is where the deja vu starts. And the similarities aren't only there on the surface level details of these seasons, no, they are actually so deep in the underlying analytics as well. But we'll get into that part in a little bit. So Klopp's 7th season at Dortmund and his 7th season at Liverpool started with losing their key attackers in the summer. Klopp's Dortmund lost a pretty good striker named Robert Lewandowski to a pretty good team called Bayern Munich in Germany. Liverpool this past summer also lost the key attacker in Sadio Mane to the same German club Bayern Munich. Hey, but at least Mane didn't leave for free, right? Dortmund at the time were able to sign a young and talented Italian striker named Ciro Immobile in Lewandowski's place. Liverpool replaced their key attacker with a young and talented striker in Darwin Núñez. The funny thing is that both of these strikers had the same problem, and it's that they were extremely frustrating in front of goal. Both strikers led their teams in shots on target, which is something that I think many Liverpool fans will understand if they watched Darwin at all last season. Ciro Immobile had 4 shots per 90 minutes, and Darwin had almost 4.5 shots per 90 minutes, easily leading both of their respective teams. Immobile and Darwin also had extremely high expected goals per 90 figures. Immobile had 0.45 expected goals per 90 minutes, which was good enough for second best on the team. Darwin led Liverpool with 0.64 expected goals per 90 minutes, even better than Salah. The weirdest thing is that Darwin scored 9 goals on the season, which happened to be third best for Liverpool last year, while Immobile only scored 3 goals. He could shoot, but he definitely could not score. Kinda like me. It was crazy how both of these strikers were able to produce so many chances every game, but they couldn't finish for the life of them. To be fair though, Darwin improved during the second half of the season, unlike Ciro Immobile. It gets crazier though, just trust me. Liverpool also had a squad that played under Klopp for a while, and injuries hurt the team this past season. Many people speculated it was because of playing Klopp's high-intense gegenpressing system that was causing these injuries, while Klopp's Dortmund had the exact same injury issues during their season, with very little midfield depth being brought in the summer before, resulting in midfield setups during the season that were fine, but they were lacking key pieces. See where I'm going? Kinda like Liverpool this past season. These injuries and poor performances followed both teams to the halfway point of the season, where Klopp's Dortmund were actually in the relegation zone at Christmas, and Klopp's Liverpool were in a better spot, but they were still disappointed to be around mid-table during the midpoint of the season. Both teams did end up getting European competition spots at the end of the season, with Dortmund managing to finish 7th place in the league, while Liverpool were able to also get Europa League by finishing 5th. So both teams were able to conjure up these great second half of the season runs to finish in at least European competition. But how did they do it? If you're thinking that the teams simply played better, then you'd be right. But there was something strange going on about Klopp's teams and their pressing. They just weren't pressing as hard to start the season. Klopp's PPDA at Dortmund, PPDA is basically a stat that says the lower the number, the harder the press, dropped a whole point from the previous 2 seasons. Dortmund were 5th in the league in the lowest PPDA by the halfway mark, a significant drop from being consistently the highest pressing team in Germany the past 2 seasons. Liverpool were 7th in PPDA at the halfway point of the season, after leading the league and being 2nd in the league with the lowest PPDA in the last 2 seasons. Both teams were able to swing it around, with Dortmund finishing around their typical PPDA levels and Liverpool leading the league with the lowest PPDA for the second half of the Premier League season. So what caused these intensity drops during the first half of the season? I've pinned it down to 3 different factors: injuries, new attackers, and probably some general fatigue. The easiest to blame is the general fatigue from not refreshing the squad a whole lot during the summer and having the same players in a high-intensity system year over year. I get that. Injuries are a result of fatigue and the lack of squad refreshing, but it also changed the way that Liverpool and Dortmund pressed. When Dortmund had their main starters of Marco Reus, Nuri Sahin, Henrik Mkhitaryan, and Robert Lewandowski in the previous season at Dortmund, they led the team in defensive actions per 90 minutes. In Klopp's 7th season at Dortmund, Lewandowski was gone, Nuri Sahin and Marco Reus had terrible injury luck, and Henrik Mkhitaryan's numbers decreased significantly. Replacing these players with similar good players like Gundogan, Shinji Kagawa, and Immobile caused a huge decrease in the intensity of Dortmund's press, especially during the first half of the season. We saw a similar issue this season with Liverpool, as Sadio Mane was gone, Diogo Jota, Thiago, Curtis Jones, James Milner, and even Firmino missed time, and they're all very important players in Liverpool's press. When Gakpo joined mid-season and Jota came back and Liverpool kind of had a healthy squad again, the attack got a huge bump in intensity that I think was really big for Liverpool's second half performances. The last reason was the attacking changes. While Immobile wasn't a great replacement for Lewandowski's output, and Darwin is kind of getting better but he's not quite at Mane numbers just yet, the biggest change in their outputs came from their pressing. When Lewandowski left Dortmund, he left a huge hole in their press. Lewandowski's pressing figures can kind of go unnoticed really, but he was a really good presser in that Dortmund system. Immobile came in and halved his numbers, not being able to replace the goals and replace his pressing intensity up top. This was another reason for the pressing numbers to keep decreasing for both teams. When Darwin came in to replace Mane, he also had to fill a pressing gap up top. Mane was averaging about 14.5 pressures per 90 minutes, while Darwin was sitting at around 11 during the middle of the season. Unfortunately, pressures aren't a free stat anymore since January, but if you know where to find them, I would do some dirty things to get my hands on free pressing stats. So not only was the drop-off in goal production from these strikers big, but it was also the pressing aspect that they couldn't replace. And if pressing doesn't convince you, in the 3 games that Darwin missed during the end of the season with injury, Liverpool averaged a 4 PPDA, incredibly low figures. But in the 3 games prior to those last 3 games, where Darwin started 2 and he subbed in on 1, Liverpool had a PPDA of almost 9. There were other similarities, such as both teams being really bad in the first 35 minutes of a match and conceding early goals really often during both seasons, but these are some of the funniest and biggest deja vu points that I wanted to hit on. Hopefully, we can see Liverpool back to full strength next season, and maybe Klopp can experience deja vu from a better season, like when they won the league or when they won the Champions League.